Hi, this is J.R. Martin with the Indie Publisher Bookstore podcast. Today I'll be speaking with Bonnie Caps. Before I do, I just wanted to talk to you guys and let you know what this podcast is about since this is the first one that we're going to have live. Uh, the podcast is going to be primarily about indie publishers and indie authors, and we're going to take the time to interview them and find out what's going on with their minds, what inspired them to write their stories, what inspired them to go the self publishing route. Uh, by listening to this, I hope that you get a couple of good ideas as far as if you're readers, what stories may be good for you to read, or if you are also indie authors or that want to self publish. Hopefully, you get a couple of tips on how to do that as well. That's the purpose of this. I also want to just promote those indie authors and indie publishers because they are less likely to experience a large amount of success with their writing. There are a few out there that do experience huge amounts of success, but for the most part, they're doing this and they're self publishing these stories with the hopes, I believe, that people will read them and hopefully be inspired by them or learn something new from them. So today, I hope you enjoy the podcast, and if so, like us, check out our website, indiepublisherbookstore.com, and then check out the site of today's indie author as well. Thank you. Hey, Bonnie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good. So, I see recently you just released your latest book. It's a sequel to Deliver Us for Amelia, correct?
Yes, Gabriel.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and then the series as a whole?
Well, Gabriel is the sequel for Deliverance for Amelia, and all of my books in this series have two characters. Um, Generally, it's the either an anti-hero or the villain and the heroine. So the
Mm-hmm.
first book is Deliverance for Amelia, which basically features Gabe and Amelia. Gabe is a psychopath. He's a hit man, and he kills people in horrible ways. And Amelia just unfortunately gets trapped in the whole situation. And Gabriel pretty much follows up with that. I can't give too much away on Gabriel because I would give away too much of the story.
Understood, because we don't want to do that. We want to be able to read it ourselves and find out more about Gabriel.
Right.
So what inspired you to write these characters and to write these stories?
Well, I get that question a lot, especially because of the nature of these characters. Um, Gabe, for me, actually came very naturally, which was a little bit strange, but he came really naturally to me. I was actually with my husband whenever he was driving, or he's still driving the truck, but we were with him at the time. And I was just in the truck one day, and I was actually working on another book, and I kind of stopped, and I looked at him, and I said, wouldn't it be cool if I could, write a dark book, a dark erotic book, but also have horror elements in that book? And it was pretty much just a way to kind of test myself to see if I could do it. And then it kind of took off from there.
Right. Wow, and that's pretty exciting. So you were just testing yourself, just trying to see if this was something that you could do, and uh, that's very cool as a writer, testing yourself in that way. Because I know sometimes some writers get stuck in genres, and they don't try to break out, and so you end up seeing them writing one or two books, and that's about it. So,
Right.
how has testing yourself helped your creativity?
It's changed it a lot. It's actually made me grow a lot as an author. I started off, my first book I wrote in 2013, and it was actually a young adult fantasy, which is very different than what I've been writing lately. But I
Right.
just didn't feel it. I was very cautious. I was new to being an author, and I was afraid to put certain things in that novel. So whenever I wrote the next book that I wrote was Jay Creedy, which is a paranormal book. And I wrote that book, and I kind of started to venture out a little bit into not being so cautious. But then with Deliverance for Amelia, it kind of took me to a different place, and it's changed the way that I write. I'm kind of leaning more towards dark, thriller, horror, that type of genre. Now, the whole entire Killer series is actually an erotica series, so it's dark erotica, which is very disturbing to some people. But it also has a lot of horror elements. But whenever I'm done with this series, I do plan on continuing to focus on dark erotica, but I also like adding the horror elements. But I'm also working on another book called Seven Fears, and that book is not erotica. It's just a dark novel. It's a suspense, kind of like a psychological thriller.
Oh, that's very cool. Sounds very interesting. And it fits that whole platform that you're talking about, because I know a lot of writers do also write the things that they know. So, I mean, that fits the whole pattern, the dark erotica, the psychological thrillers. That is very exciting stuff. When do you think you're going to have that one released?
Seven Fears. I'm actually writing the third book in the Killer series right now. I just announced that. So people are pretty excited about that one. So I'm writing that one. I wrote about 25 words this morning so far, so it's been a good day so far. But I've got that one in the works. So that one's probably going to be releasing around December. I don't have an exact date. But Seven Fears, I'm kind of working on that one at the same time. But it's just really hard to work on two books because you get so into the characters that you're writing that if you start writing something else, that can sway you from the story. So I'm trying to get Killer Book 3 done, which is called Relentless, A Family's Curse. And it kind of goes along with the storyline of deliverance for Amelia and Gabriel. So.
Okay. And how long does it normally take you to write these stories?
It takes me, if I'm really feeling the story, which I can't write a story unless I'm really feeling it. With the Killer series, like Deliverance, I wrote that in a month, which,
oh, wow.
Yeah, which I was just banging out the words. It was just coming to me like breaths of air. You know, it was crazy. And then Gabriel took me about a month and a half, 2 months, and Relentless has been going pretty quick. So it generally takes about a month and a half to 2 months to write the rough draft, and then I've got editing and stuff like that afterwards.
Okay. And do you hire somebody to do your editing for you, or do you just edit yourself with software, or how do you do that?
I generally have my beta readers, and they're all reader, you know, they're big-time readers, so they do my betas for me. And then my mother actually does my proofreading for me, and then I'll go over it after she proofreads it over and over and over again, just so I can catch any errors. I've learned that if I transfer the document to my Kindle, it kind of looks more like a book form, and I can find errors easier that way. So that's normally how I edit.
There you go. A good pro tip for the other authors and people out there that may be listening to this. That's pretty darn cool. I'll have to remember that. And as far as publishing, self-publishing, how has that been for you? Has it been a difficult process? I know I've heard some horror stories with it.
At first, it was, and especially whenever I released The Boy in the Mirror, that was my first book. I had no idea what I was doing. It took a lot of asking other indie authors, befriending other indie authors. I have a lot of great friends in this industry that have just really helped me along the way, and they've helped me with everything, and I really owe it to them because I wouldn't know otherwise. But once I kind of got the grasp of it, the most important thing is, you know, making sure that your work's good, making sure that it's presentable, and getting it out there to an audience, and then marketing, which I hate. It's literally like it's the worst thing ever. I hate marketing, but it's just, it goes with it. I mean, whenever you're an indie author, you've got to really do everything on your own. You have people that occasionally help, but it's pretty much all up to you to make sure that your work is seen.
No, you're 100% correct on that. And, you know, I know I've done a couple of self-published books myself, just a poetry collection and then a little short story. Thank you. But the marketing aspect of it is hard. And so I know personally, like I said, if you don't have time or you have other irons in the fire and other things going on in life, getting that marketing done it's crazy difficult, and it can be very insane. So kind of how have you gone about marketing yourself and your books?
Well, at first it was a lot of Twitter, a lot of Facebook, a lot of boosting posts on Facebook, which is not always, it doesn't always do a lot, but just kind of just, and word of mouth is huge. Goodreads is huge. I literally despise Goodreads because it can be nasty sometimes there, and I usually avoid looking at it. But a lot of these people find your books through Goodreads and the reviews that people leave for them and whatnot. But I mean, and then it's word of mouth. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, which is the coolest thing ever. I have a Ebony who's amazing. She helps me with everything. She's kind of like a PA for me, and she's phenomenal. She just had a baby, so she's about to come back and help me out. And then whenever you have people reach out to you and they become fans of your work, they will spread the word like crazy. I've got some amazing girls that every single day I'm being tagged in posts because they're spreading the word, and I just adore them for it.
No, that is very amazing to have just started. You said 2013 is when you released your first book, correct?
Yes.
Wow. So in 2 years, you've built such an amazing fan base already. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
That,
But I couldn't
not a
do it
problem.
without them, honestly. That's all them.
Very cool. And what do you think about the industry as a whole right now? I know a lot of people. I've written a couple of articles myself where I've talked about the how publishing is changing. I feel like a lot of times that the publishing industry has changed to the point where it's gotten too big for itself, right? Like there's too many. Well, there's not enough players, and those players, basically have all the different imprints.
Mm-hmm.
And I think self-publishing and then the indie authors and independent bookstores and independent publishing companies are the future. How do you feel about it as a whole, as far as the industry goes?
I completely agree. I feel like it is definitely the future. And I think that it's amazing that we have the ability to share our work, on all kinds of different platforms. I primarily use Amazon. That's all I use, actually, because all of my books are available on KU. And I like doing that for people because I like them to be able to pay, like that $10 a month and be able to, get books that way. But I mean, I definitely agree. It is the future. It's amazing, and that's really all that I can say about it. I mean, and the people that you meet along the way, the other authors tend to be just phenomenal people. I've only had brush ups, which wasn't really a brush up. It was just smack talking from another author. I just never responded, but I mean, but everybody else has just been amazing. It's an amazing group of people, and these people are passionate about their fans. We love our fans. We love just the whole community as a whole is amazing.
Okay. And do you feel like there's anything that the indie author, because I know there's a lot of questions about the quality of work and then the quality of everything that's being produced, because, some of the big publishers or other people, editors, major editors are like, well, indie authors don't deliver quality and they don't deliver substance. You get what you pay for. And I don't feel that way personally. How about you?
I don't feel that way at all. Obviously, in some cases, there are people out there that and just to be honest, there's people out there that kind of just dive into it because it is a place where anybody can write something and they can put it up for sale, and you kind of just have nothing to go by other than reviews and stuff like that. But I mean, I would definitely tell everybody to give indie authors a chance. If you've never heard of them, a lot of indie authors offer their books on, like I was talking about KU, to where you Kindle Unlimited, to where you can pay the $10 a month and you have all these books at your fingertips that you can read. And that's a great way for people to discover indie authors. But I mean, and definitely, I mean, I've seen some, talk about putting their books at like $4.99, $5.99. Pricing's a big thing, especially whenever people are looking at these books. If they've never heard of you, they're not going to pay that much for, an ebook. They're just not. And so, I mean, it definitely, sorry, I got distracted. My kids are running around in there.
No, it's fine.
I'm always with my children, so do you hear cartoons in the back? But no, I mean, I definitely think that people should give us a chance because we're a new generation of people. I opted to become an indie author. I mean, I did try with my first book to get traditionally published, and, I got rejection after rejection. It's very hard to become traditionally published. But after that point, I kind of made up my mind that I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make sure that my work's where it needs to be, and I'm going to make sure that it's polished and that I make people happy. And a lot of indie authors are like that. It's their life. They're passionate about it. They love it. If you're a writer, like, I mean, we love what we do. It's our existence. So that's how I feel.
That's great, and I'm glad you said it that way because I want people listening to this to understand that you're right. Indie authors are just as passionate about their work, if not more passionate
Agreed.
than, you know, because it's when a person who is a major author who's been published and is with Random House or Tor or one of the other big guys, I know they care about their writing, but at the same time, it's they have a name, they can write a book and sell 1 million copies. Whereas when the indie author writes a book, they're doing it from the heart and they're doing it for the love of the writing because who knows if you're going to sell on Amazon. Now you
Right.
have had very good success, huge success, but we don't know. Nobody ever really knows if you're going to make it on Amazon or not.
No. Yeah.
So, right. So it's amazing. So that is congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
Um, so what other kind of do you have any writing groups that you're a part of where you are, or do you have any uh, I guess what else do you do to help you with your writing?
It's all for me. It's all a matter of being inspired. And so, I
Okay.
mean, I don't really go through any writing groups or anything like that. I have my author friends that I talk to occasionally. But I mean, usually it's just getting myself in the mindset, and it can be hard. I'm completely ADD. I'm actually like clinically ADD, so it's hard for me to pay attention. But I have the 2 kids and I'm still homeschooling and everything, but they know there's a set time when I write and I have to be left alone. I'll literally put headphones in my ears and just blare music. But I mean,
Hmm.
if you're really feeling a story, and my advice for any new author would be if you're not feeling it, then stop writing it and work on something else. It's like I did with The Boy in the Mirror. The Boy in the Mirror was never successful. It wasn't a story that really grabbed you, and I'll say that. I mean, it's still on Amazon, but I will say that it wasn't that story because I had to really force myself to write that story. And if you're feeling like you have to force yourself to write a story, then that is not the story that you should be writing. You've got to write the one that you're passionate about.
Makes sense again. You want to see that passion in the story. You want people to be able to feel it. So that's very cool. Uh, and then, so what do you? I'm sorry here.
Okay.
Uh, what other advice would you give to um, indie authors as a whole, as far as self-publishing? Because I know there's other platforms out there, and you mentioned a lot that you stick with Amazon and KU. Would you recommend that for other indie authors, or would you recommend them to try to spread books around amongst the multiple different platforms? I mean,
Yeah,
what have you found with that?
it's really a preference thing. I know a lot of authors that go through Kobo and all those other sites. And for me, it's worked well for me with Amazon, and that's why I just stick with it. I made a promise. I'm never going to change my pricing. I would say number one, don't be greedy. If you're going into this industry to make
Right.
money, you know, authors are hungry artists. They're starving artists. They're literally doing everything that they can to try to be successful. And I understand the money aspect. The money aspect can be nice, but being greedy won't get you anywhere. Look at the standard for how much indie ebooks cost. Look at the standard for how much indie print books cost and stick to that standard. And even if you do start getting sales, don't be greedy. Don't change your pricing just because, oh, people like this, so I'm going to bump it up to $3.99 or I'm going to bump it up to this. In my opinion, that's greedy. And for me personally, it's about doing what I love and it's not about the money aspect. Like I said, it's nice, but it's not what should be your primary concern whenever you're writing a book. But yeah, I mean, that's really, and then also another thing is don't limit yourself. I mean, don't limit yourself. If you feel like you need to put something into a story, then put it in there. I mean, it's with Deliverance for Amelia and Gabriel and Relentless, that's something that I've really, it kind of changed how I am as a writer, how I am creatively, because I kind of took those restraints away. And as soon as I did that, I just started banging out books. And so that's another important thing. Don't limit yourself.
Right. So, have you ever taken any classes on writing, or do you actually go to? Have you been to any of the big writers' conferences, or have you just done this basically I was reading your profile, and it says that you were also educated at home by your mother. Is that really where all of this stems from? Just everything that you learned from your mother and the writing, and that's how you do it now? Or have you ever been to any of these other specialty classes that a lot of authors try to go to and get into?
No, I took it all from what I learned, and I've been writing for a long time since I was a little kid, and it all started out with poetry for me. Hold on a second.
All right.
Sorry, I told them, I was like,
That's okay.
please be good, but you know how that works. But but I mean, whenever I was younger, I just kind of it was really something that got me through a lot of hard times. And, I would write poetry at first, and that was my life. And it kind of was the only thing that I knew to do whenever I was upset. Whenever I was upset about something, I wrote. Whenever I wanted to say something to somebody, I wrote them a letter. I didn't know how to verbalize, to verbalize with people in a normal way. I've had really bad anxiety my entire life. And so you a lot of times with anxiety, you just keep things locked up, and that's kind of just builds and builds and builds. So it all started with poetry. Whenever I was homeschooling, I was in fifth grade, and we homeschooled through Texas Tech University. So all of our work would be sent to them so they could analyze it and grade it and whatnot. And I wrote this poem, and it was a poem about a pond that we had behind our house. And I loved the pond. I would always sit by the pond, and I would write by the pond, and it was just one of my favorite places to be. So I wrote this poem about the pond, and I don't have it anymore. I wish that I did, but it basically was describing the pond, and the professor sent it back, and he had said that I cheated on it, that my mom had written it. And so it was funny because he said, well, this is college level writing, like this isn't something that I would imagine, fifth grader would write. And then after that, I started going back to public school at that point. It was always my favorite subject. I just always had just this love affair with words. I love words. I love everything about them. I love how they sound. I love how they look. I just love how they feel whenever you say them. It's words are, I'm obsessed with them. And so I had tried for years. I sat there and I tried and tried and tried to write a novel. I never could do it. I could write poetry all day. A novel, I couldn't do it. I had tried to write about 4 or 5 different books until I was driving to work one day, and I was working at a satellite company, and I hated my job, but I was driving there.
Right.
And I was just listening to this song. It was Florence and the Machine, and I was listening to Heavy in Your Arms, and all of a sudden this story just smacks me in the face, and I never had just the urgent need to sit there and write it down or write down, some notes about it, because I was just desperate to write it. So I wrote that story, but like I said, it was my first story, and I just kind of had difficulties being passionate about it because it was the first one, and I was restraining myself and whatnot. So I wrote that and self-published it, and it kind of flopped. So I was like, what do I do now? And so I kept on trying to write after that. And then I got in the truck with Dusty. And the crazy thing is I was in the truck with Dusty for about 7 months. And in that time I wrote Jay Creedy. Jay Creedy took me a while to write. It took me about 3-4 months to write Jay Creedy. And so I self-published that. It did okay. It didn't do like Deliverance did. But then that's whenever I wrote Deliverance. And then Deliverance at first was kind of like, meh, and then it just blew up. And I couldn't believe it. I told Dusty, I was like, maybe it'll do a little bit better than Jake Creedy did. And Dusty's my husband, you know that, but for the viewers. But
right.
yeah, and so I told him, I was like, maybe it'll do a little bit better. And it just blew up. And I was shocked. And then I started having people reach out to me, and I was just like, just the feeling that you get whenever somebody says, oh my gosh, I just want to tell you that I just love it. And I'm just obsessed with the story and stuff like that. And obviously you get bad feedback too. It happens. But I mean, it really did. It's kind of been just crazy. I honestly can't believe it.
And that's the beauty of it, right? You didn't have to go through a major publisher. You didn't have to have somebody marketing for you. You created a piece of fiction, a work so good that people found it, passed it around word of mouth, and then you're right. The reviews are stellar, and you have tons and tons of reviews, stellar reviews
Thank you.
about how good Deliverance is. So that is the amazing part of it. Uh, Once again, Bonnie, congratulations. It's been great talking to you today and just kind of hearing everything and hearing you talk about your writing, hearing your passion, and it's inspiring. And I hope a lot of other people today are inspired after hearing this and seeing what you've been able to do just by producing something that's good quality.
Yeah.
And real quick, you said you had a website, if I remember correctly. Can you go ahead and give everybody that link, or tell them the
Ooh,
website?
I don't I don't remember the link. It's through VP. So what we'll probably have to do is did you have like a place where you can put like the information and I can send it to you?
Yes, I'll be able to throw that on there.
Cool.
So I'll go
Sorry
ahead.
about that.
No, not a problem. So I'll have the link below the podcast, just so everybody can go ahead and go to your website and check out all your other all your books and everything. So that's very cool. Bonnie, is there anything else you want to say before we get out of here today?
No, I appreciate you having me.
Hey, thanks for coming and being just being on the show here today. You have a great day. Okay.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.